What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Mets Hot Stove right here on the channels and on X. How's everybody doing on this Monday, January 19th, as we are getting closer and closer to spring training? Yet, big free agents, big trade targets still on the market, and it's looking like one of those are going to come to an end rather shortly. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
Is it me? Is it me? I couldn't hear you the whole time.
You
Could be
hear me
me.
now?
Hold on. I got to get this fixed. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Let me know if you can hear me in the chat, guys. I just want to make sure if you can hear me. It might be on my end, might be on Chris's end. I'm not sure, but let me know if you guys can hear me. What a way to start the stream. Just making sure everybody can hear us before we. All right, so I think Chris might have had the issue, but let me know in the comments, guys, if you are able to hear me. And all right, everybody can hear me. All right, so it's on Chris's end. Chris will be back in just a second. I know he was having a little bit of technical difficulties, but he couldn't hear anybody. So let's see if he can.
Am I good?
Hear me? Oh, hear me now.
Am I good?
I hear you. You hear me?
All right. It
All
wouldn't.
right. Yeah, we're good. All
Here
right.
we go.
All right.
It
Here we
wouldn't
go.
be a Mets hot stove without some technical difficulties, so I do apologize about that. I could hear absolutely nothing, so I had no idea what was going on. Anywho, great to be here with you all. Thank you for sticking with us here in the first couple of minutes of this stream before we get to any of these topics. So I'm excited. A lot of moves that could be on the horizon, a lot of things that we've heard, especially from Will Salmon in the recent report that he dropped a little bit ago in the article, and a lot of names that we've been talking about on both of our channels that could best suit the Mets' needs moving forward. As we all know, we know what the holes of this team are currently. Left field, as it currently stands, the starting rotation, and some bullpen help. Maybe another bullpen piece that is on the market. So let's get into it. I think we're starting off with Cody Bellinger. Again, once more, sorry for the technical difficulties.
Yeah, and that's where we are going to start. We're going to start with Cody Bellinger here tonight. And look, for months now, we know how much of a perfect fit Cody Bellinger was just for the New York Mets. This was before Bo Bichette, before Polanco, before many guys the Mets signed or traded for. Bellinger made so much sense for the Mets because depending on if you got Cody Bellinger, you can have an option of where you want to go on the market to obtain a first baseman or an outfielder. With Cody Bellinger, it's obvious, right? Depending on where you want to play him. And I do wonder if the Mets, if they can land him, and we'll talk about why and how they can land him, or when it comes to what's going on with the Bellinger market. Would they put him at first base? Would they put him in left field or center field? We know Carson Bench is going to get a hell of a shot to win a job in the outfield. It's just a matter of will he be with Juan Soto and Cody Bellinger, or will he be with Juan Soto and somebody else might be playing first base, Chris. So before we get into like the what and the how for Cody Bellinger, where do you think they're going to put him if the Mets do sign him?
That is a very loaded question, and I am inclined to think that it would be in left field, but then it begs the question, what is going to be the plan with Carson Bench in that platoon role with Tyrone Taylor? And as we have stated countless of times ever since the Mets traded for Tyrone Taylor, we know that he is supposed to be a fourth outfielder. If he is starting on your team, your lineup is probably not at its greatest strength and full strength, I would think. So it depends on how Carson Bench does in spring training. I wouldn't put it past the Mets to, keep him in the minor leagues to start off the 2026 season if they're able to successfully land another outfielder. And at this point, with what we've seen at first base with Jorge Polanco, I would have to think that they would give him the nod at first base, but I've been seeing a lot of Mets fans talk about this fact in that Brett Beatty and his frame, he's a big guy, he's a tall guy, and his frame suits first base if that is the move that David Stearns wants to make and the route that he wants to go down. I'm just not convinced with him at first base, man. I'm not even fully convinced with Polanco at first base. So for me, I think it would be left field predominantly for Cody Bellinger. But if they are seriously, and this is in the event that Brett Beatty sticks around, right? But if they are serious about offloading Brett Beatty and you are lacking that clear first baseman and you have Jorge Polanco that is readily available to DH, then you have some things to play with because Bellinger can play first base. You would still be missing that outfielder, which would probably be the Benj Tyrone Taylor combination. Or you can have Polanco play first base and Vientos, if he is around, be the DH for this team. And so I think what that question boils down to with Bellinger, if the Mets are successful in taking him away from the Yankees, is who is on this team? Who's left? Vientos or Beatty? Because I don't think Vientos, if he's the one sticking around, is going to get any playing time anywhere in the field. But Brett Beatty, they're more inclined to put, to put out there, even if he's out of position, because he just has the better glove. He has more natural ability and better speed to go ahead and range left or right. So hopefully that makes sense. I would still probably like to see him be a primary left fielder with some off chances at first base if you go out and get Cody Bellinger.
Yeah, Beatty does have the frame of a first baseman. He's lanky, he's tall, but again, who knows? If he can play first base. We know Vientos technically can play first base, but he didn't look good when he had the opportunities to play first base. And I know Polanco is working hard in the Dominican Republic at first base, but again, he's never done it in his career. Not saying he can't do it. He is a good glove, but who knows if he can do it again. It's a whole different story playing middle infield compared to first base. Different cutoffs, how to play on the bag when there's a runner on base. So many different things you have to do, squeeze bunts, bunt plays and everything like that, doing the wheel play. All that stuff is totally different as middle infielder than a corner infielder. So, again, can he do it? Yes. But I would feel so much more comfortable just to put Bellinger at first base. I know that's not going to make everybody happy, but I feel like there's a trade that's going to go down that's going to take some of these infielders off this team, and it's going to make it a little bit more easier to figure out who's going to play on this roster. So I would put Bellinger at first base and put Carson Benj in center field or in left field and play Tyrone Taylor. I know that the bat doesn't play well at all, and he's a perfect fourth outfielder. But you know what? David Stern set this roster up, with the possibility of Tyrone Taylor actually playing a lot more than people, believe he might play. Because Carson Benj might not be ready. He might have a great opportunity in spring training, but not look ready. He might look overmatched. You can't start him on opening day if he's overmatched. At least Tyrone Taylor, you got the glove. He's going to be batting 8th or 9th in the lineup. And at the very least, you can actually see, all right, this is what we're going to do. We'll put Tyrone Taylor in center field, and maybe you just put Carson Benj in left field and let him work out the kinks in left field defensively, and then also in the bottom of the lineup offensively, and that's where you can go as well. And you solidify your infield, right? You make your infield one of the better infields in baseball, right? You got Simeon and Lindor up the middle. Great defensive pairing right there. Right now it's Beatty at third base and Bellinger at first base. I mean, you could say that's a pretty damn good defensive infield right there. And for somebody,
You mean Bichette?
Oh, so I'm sorry, Bichette. I see it. I'm so crazy about Bichette being actually here. It's weird because another infielder. But yes, Bichette. I'm sorry. I'm thinking the B word, and I'm thinking not bitch. I promise. But Bichette and But
I was like, hold on, wait. I know you didn't just say Beatty.
like it's funny. I was just looking at something about Bichette too, and then thinking that he's still a Blue Jay, but that's all right.
So, Rob, I think you're making a great point there with the excess of infielders. And I think that this conversation surrounding Bellinger and the position that he's going to play, and we have to get into the parameters here too of what the Yankees are offering in case everybody here that's in the chat, whether it's on your channel, my channel, doesn't know. And we'll get into that here in just a second about how this could be the perfect storm for the Mets to swoop in. But that all depends on Bellinger and Boris if they are willing to take a high AAV short-term deal like Bichette did. But we'll get into that here in just a second. I think that this conversation, if Bellinger does somehow end up being a Met, which would be absolutely insane, this lineup would be better than last year's. I think, in my humble opinion, it would be the best lineup most likely since either 22 or all the way back in like '06, I think is how far back you can go ahead, because that 2015 lineup was really not that great. And the fact that they made the World Series in that year was crazy within itself. But all that aside, I think it depends on the prospects. And that's going to also transition us later into some of these names that we've been talking about on our channel about making trades for certain guys, whether they're an outfielder, a position player, or a pitcher that is on the market. How do the Mets view Ryan Clifford and Jet Williams? Those are also internal outfield candidates, but how ready are they going to be at any point in the 2026 season? Also, are they even going to be here for the 2026 season in the organization, given some of these other trade rumors? So I think that right now, maybe I should backtrack a little bit and agree with you that Bellinger at first base makes the most sense, because if the Mets really are going to hold on to a lot of these prospects, which I'm not sure how feasible that is if we're talking all these trades, but if Clifford and Jet Williams and Carson Bench are all here in this organization, that is a lot of outfield potential depth that you can go ahead and slot in at left field. Or even center field with Jet Williams and Carson Bench if Tyrone Taylor's bat drops off. But that's a lot of insurance right then and there. And then you can go ahead and focus on first base. So I think that it's also important to consider the prospects moving forward and who will be included in trades, who will not be included in trades. And my eyes are on Jet Williams. We know Carson Bench is going to be in the fold. My eyes are on Jet Williams and Ryan Clifford. Coincidentally, two guys that I've also included in hypothetical trade packages in two of my last two videos, going back to yesterday and today. So
yeah, but right before we talk about what the Yankees offer Bellinger and how can the Mets get him, this is the argument we've been both talking about in our own videos and just on our shows, our live shows, is that people are so afraid and complain, and I know I got a lot of complaints on the Duran video for sure. The fact that people are like, oh, why would you give up Jet Williams? Why would you do that? Because you got to look at where are these guys playing. You can't leave them in the minor leagues when these guys are potentially ready and not use them either as an asset or a potential possibility on the roster. Like, that's the problem. Like, Carson Bench clearly jumped over Jet Williams and Ryan Clifford on the depth charts, where they're giving Carson Bench the opportunity to win a starting job in the outfield, and Jet Williams has been here longer. So, you have to make a decision on these guys, Chris. And that is the thing that's always frustrated when people, and I know it's probably on your video too, with some comments where people think you're out of your mind with trading these guys. But you have to look at what is the dynamic of the Mets farm system and where guys are on the depth charts. And are they ready? Is this guy getting more of an opportunity than this guy? You can't wait around and just hold them all and just hope for the best at the trade deadline, where we know David Stearns has been a little bit skimmish at the trade deadline for big moves. You can't worry about that. You got to worry about putting the best roster you can on opening day, and then you see what you need at the deadline. And that's the thing that I get frustrated about, because, like you say, Ryan Clifford, Jet Williams, where are these guys playing if you get Bellinger and Carson Bench as your outfielder as well? Then there's nowhere to go at all.
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing that I was going to say too, I know that this kind of goes against this whole Clifford and, Jet Williams argument, but let's just forget about them for a second. I'm not also discounting if the Mets go out and get Bellinger. I'm not discounting them putting him in center field and having Carson Bench or Tyrone Taylor be, really more so Carson Bench, because I think if you are playing Tyrone Taylor in the starting nine, you have to have him at center field. I think I would put his glove a little bit above Cody Bellinger's at this point. But it's pretty close. Bellinger's a good center fielder. We all know that. But to get the best lineup offensively as possible, you could have Bellinger in center field, Carson Bench, if he cracks the roster on opening day, as your opening day left fielder. And then in this scenario, I would assume that Brett Baty is sticking around. He'd be your first baseman, with Jorge Polanco being your DH. I think that is the best possible outcome and best possible scenario if the Mets do land Cody Bellinger, is maybe even just putting him in center field and holding off on trading Brett Baty. We just don't know. It's a toss-up. I mean, there's going to be 4 teams involved now that the Yankees are stalling in their contract talks. So
Yeah.
that's also a different route that the Mets can take defensively in their alignment.
Yeah, exactly. And what's funny is, with the Yankees giving them the offer of, we've heard, I don't know if you heard anything different, but 5 years, 150 to 160 seems like where they're staying. They don't seem like they're moving anywhere. Apparently, it's a big signing bonus that they're offering him with that contract, which has been more of a talking point, I say, over the last couple of years, of bonuses being a big deal, which we never used to heard of before. It used to be just about the contract. Now it's about bonuses to sign the contract and deferments now and all this craziness, where it's not just simple as 1+1 = 2. It's all over the place now when it comes to contracts. So, we all believe that the only way the Mets get Cody Bellinger is on a short-term deal. They're not going to give 5 years to Cody Bellinger. That's why most people thought, especially when Bo Bichette was signed, everybody's like, "Oh, Bellinger's probably not going to be an issue." And then not too long after the Bichette signing, everybody's like, the Mets are still in on Bellinger, and the only way they can be on Bellinger is a short-term deal, probably 3 years. I don't see them going for it's probably 3 years, and I think the Yankees have an opt-out after year 2 in their contract. And if the Mets the only way I think the Mets can actually land Bellinger if they give him an opt-out after the first year with a 3-year deal. That's the only way I think they can do it. I don't think they can match the Yankees offer when it comes to 3 years and then have the opt-out after year 2, even if it is $40 million a year or something like that. I don't think the Mets, it's going to be enticing enough to land Bellinger. I think you have to give him the opportunity to opt out after the first year. I don't like that. I never like that with these opt-outs after the first year, because we're going to be talking about these openings next year again. But again, we would have the guy for 2026, so that's all I care about at this moment. But what do you think a type of deal can look like for the Mets to land Cody Bellinger?
So this is what I was thinking, because I think the Yankees have 2 opt-outs in their offer. I think they have one
year 2 and 3.
year 2 and 3. Okay. So I think that the Mets have to blow Bellinger and Boris away with the AAV. And that deal that the Yankees are offering, let's just say it's 5 for 160, is like the top of what we've heard. That's $32 million a year, if I'm doing my math correctly. Let me just check my calculator to make sure I'm not, lying here. $32 million a year AAV. I get that that's probably the value of what Cody Bellinger should be making, I should say. But this guy is coming off of watching Bo Bichette get 42 and Kyle Tucker getting 60. You think Boris is going to settle for $32 million a year for Bellinger?
No.
Absolutely not. So this is definitely doable from the Mets' perspective. They have to structure this deal the same exact way that they structured the Bichette deal.
Yep.
Opt-outs after year 1 and year 2. You have that flexibility for Bellinger to go back out onto the market at either age 31 or 32, because let's not forget, a lot of people have questions surrounding Bellinger still, not about the defense, about how he is going to perform outside of Yankee Stadium. Because you take a look at his home versus road splits last season, it's a great season overall. And I'm sure he would produce. But those home road splits are a little bit concerning in the eyes of many. And I even look at that and I'm like, we'll see what happens. But I'm willing to take that chance. A lot of people thought, listen, Bellinger's not Juan Soto, but a lot of people thought Juan Soto's production was going to drop off immensely, especially playing at City over Yankee Stadium, and it didn't, right? I think Bellinger would be the same scenario here, especially given the weaponry around him. I think if you do between $40 to $45 million. I know it sounds crazy for Bellinger. A lot of Mets fans would scoff at even the idea of that. But they just gave Bichette $42 million. There's no chance Bichette's even worth that at all. And the Phillies were offering him $28 million a year. So they upped it by $14 million. That's what the Mets are going to have to do. Up it from 32 that the Yankees are giving him by at least 10 to 12 million dollars, which puts him in the range of 42 to 45 million dollars. So, in simple terms, you take 45 times 3 and you give that to Bellinger. 135 over 3 years, opt-outs after 1 or 2 years. Boom, you're in this lineup with Lindor, Soto, Bichette, Polanco, and we are rocking and rolling. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah, and you know we all know about Scott Boras. If you notice how Scott Boras have pivoted away from, he's not. I mean, he always wants long term deals for his players, but he always talks about AAV. How this player is top three in baseball in his position at the AAV level for outfielders. Like if you make Cody Bellinger one of the top five outfielders with the highest AAV, Boris loves that. He loves that type of play. He loves the long term deals, but when he sees that there's no competition for the long term deals, I mean, just look at Tucker and Burchett. We expect it. I mean, we know that the Blue Jays we're definitely going 10 years. We knew about the Bichette with the Phillies. What was it, 7 years? If I'm not mistaken, 7 year deal, right? And they both went with more money per year, a couple of opt outs, and shorter term deals. So it's a trend this offseason. And lucky for the Mets, because let's be honest, if any of these guys were willing to take long term deals, the Mets would have nobody right now. Would probably be in panic mode at this point because if Bichette and Tucker would have took long term deals, there would have been no way that Bellinger would take a short term deal because it's always a trend during the offseason. What other guys around his, the top tier free agents, usually when a lot of those guys take certain deals, it's around similar deals of everybody else when it comes to all long term deals or short term deals. This year, the trend is short term deals. And if you can go back on them, if you can make $40 million this year and then go back on the market again and get a long term deal, I mean, you probably win whatever you wanted overall anyway. And I think that's what a lot of the players are looking at. And you got to understand, we all got to understand too, is that I think a lot of the players are very concerned about the CBA. We talked about this early in the hot stove this year in the offseason about the CBA being a problem for players. They're trying to get as much money as possible in 2026 because there is no guarantee of a season of 2027. And guys, even if they do opt out, but I think that this is another key, Chris, is that year two of an opt out, where they don't have to opt out after year one, if they have that option of opting on a year one, they can wait. And I wonder if the strike is going to cause, if the CBA strike is going to cause this. If they go on strike, if there's a CBA lockout or whatever it is, the players don't have to opt out at a certain point in the offseason if the CBA isn't, agreed upon, because they can wait it until the strike ends, and then because all the dates that we usually have for the offseason could be pushed back until a later date. So these guys don't have to worry about opting out maybe until February. So they're gonna know if they're like, oh man, I don't trust this CBA. Spring training is starting in 3 weeks, and the lockout or strike just ended, and they're like, you know what, I'm not going to opt out. I don't trust myself getting a long-term deal with 3 weeks to go, because when this lockout ends, they're going to speed up everything quickly, spring training as quickly as possible. And I wonder if a lot of the players are looking at it like that, where, you know what, I'm still making a ton of money and I got protection on my end, because they could have signed a long-term deal. I'm still confused why they didn't, in my opinion, because they always talk about security, Chris. And, Bichette passing that up on the Phillies when he basically, it was like a verbal agreement with the Phillies. And Kyle Tucker did not want to go to Canada for 10 years. And they're making a lot of money per year. But that long-term security isn't there, especially with the strike coming up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even want to talk about the CBA and how that's going to affect everything. So I don't know. I mean, that's a good point. I don't know how heavily these players are thinking about it when they're taking these deals. It seems like some of these players are just a-okay with taking the high AAV, even if it's a short-term deal, under the assumption that they'll go back onto the free agent market and get the long-term deal that they think they deserve, right? And that's the same thing with Bo Bichette, who's younger than, well, he's younger than Bellinger, but not Tucker. He's, I think, the same age as Tucker, but anyways, doesn't matter. Yeah, it's definitely a strategy, but we all know the negotiations with Boris are just going to be infinitely hard, right? It's going to be damn near impossible to reason with the guy. But it's very clear, and this is where the Mets, because Will Salmon, the way that he was reporting on this, was saying that they will make a very big effort on a short-term deal, but they have no problems pivoting elsewhere if they don't want to take the short-term deal. But my thing is that show me a better offer that Bellinger's going to get on the market than 5 for 160 as of right now. And I just don't see where that's coming from. I mean, the Blue Jays could do the funniest thing and make that happen, but I don't think they're going to reach into that money that they saved up for Tucker and beat that Yankees offer. I don't know. It's a whole revolving door here. The Phillies could also be in play. That 7-year deal they were trying to give Bichette, maybe they go ahead and are like, hey, you want a 7-year deal? Here it is. You know what I mean? I mean, Bo Bichette's what, 28 versus Bellinger being almost 31 this summer, so it's a little bit different there. But I think the Phillies could be a dark horse candidate, even though they said after their Adolis Garcia signing that they were done with the outfield. I think that losing out on Bo Bichette leaves a very sour taste in their mouths. Have you seen the Phillies like broadcast and reporters and whoever else, podcasters talking about the Mets swooping in for Bichette and how pissed they are right now? It's music to my ears, but that very upsetness, whatever you want to call it, feelings that they have is probably a resemblance of what they're feeling in the front office. They thought that it was a lock to sign Bichette, and they could go full throttle after Bellinger at that point too. So the Blue Jays and the Phillies, I probably worry about the most. And I think if I'm a Yankees fan, I'm like, what the hell is going on right here? Because the Yankees have been quiet all off season long. The one thing that they are holding on to and have held on to is this Bellinger idea of him returning alongside Aaron Judge. And now they want to shortchange him. Yeah, $32 million is a fair offer, but I'm sorry, the market changes when this guy's the last big bat remaining. Of course, you know who you're dealing with and his agent. So the way that they're approaching it is very lackadaisical, and they are leaving a lot of room for the Mets or some other team to swoop in here. So it's going to be very interesting how this shakes out. All I know is that if I'm the Mets, I really try to push for this because you get this done, your lineup is set. It's probably on paper the second best lineup in baseball objectively, and you can go ahead and focus on pitching and forget about anything offensive related because you'll have the prospect talent internally, you'll have the veterans, and you'll have a fantastic top 5 in your lineup, and then you just go worry about pitching.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the thing, right? I think to have a better offseason than a lot of people we're going to expect. If you can get Bichette, Bellinger, and a top pitcher, and we're going to talk about one of those top pitchers very soon, I think it'd be a very good offseason compared to where it started, and people, really losing their minds over what went down over the first month and a half of the offseason, where the Mets basically, threw away the entire core that, everybody, was emotionally connected to. And, it was a rough go for Met fans for a while. But I think Bo Bichette signing brought a little bit of joy to Met fans because it shows they're willing to go get the proven talent. And that was a concern of us. We were talking about a rebuild year 2 weeks ago on Hot Stove. Like, that is how quickly things can change. And I'm glad it happened. And I talked about it. I'm one to never give Stearns credit. I think he deserves no credit for a while. But that Bo Bichette signing, I finally gave him credit because he pivoted aggressively and did what I was hoping he was going to. I didn't think it was going to be Bo Bichette. I thought it was just going to be Bellinger. But Bo Bichette, hell of a signing, and I gave him credit for that. You got to finish the offseason right and get a Bellinger and a guy like Peralta we'll talk about just now. But do you think, because the Yankees are involved in both players that we're going to be talking about, Bellinger and Peralta, if the Yankees do sign Bellinger, I think I wouldn't be shocked if they're kind of out, or not. I'm not going to say out, but they ain't going to be leading the charge for Freddie Peralta, in my opinion. But if they lose out on Bellinger, Cashman's known to pivot rather quickly and aggressively to go get somebody else where he's somewhat of a type star, and Peralta is one of them. And this is a fun game right now because both New York teams are going after Freddie Peralta right now. And I know people have so many different ideas of what the trade could be. And we are talking about the Milwaukee Brewers, where they are very good at picking talent on other teams to trade their players for. I look at it this way. If we're going to get Freddie Peralta, I want Trevor McGill. And I want to find a way to get Trevor McGill in that deal. That might be hard to do, but the Brewers seem willing to get rid of these guys. I don't understand why, especially Trevor McGill. But if we can get Trevor McGill in a Freddie Peralta deal, Chris, I mean, you're talking about an offseason that started in the dumps, and this is probably one of the better off seasons that the Mets had in a while, in my opinion. And that's saying something, especially coming from me, who can't stand David Stearns and still don't trust him. But if he pulls that off, it's very hard to kill him after that.
Yeah, I think that it's very obvious why they would trade Peralta. I mean, even a lot of, reporters that cover the Brewers are saying that this is almost a lock. So it's very obvious there. And then you take a look at Trevor McGill. I mean, if you all missed the video that I dropped earlier today, I talked about this very scenario about a trade proposal with McGill and Peralta going to the Mets in exchange for Brandon Sproat plus. It wasn't meant to be like the final offer from the Mets perspective. That's like maybe where the conversations start and laying the groundwork for what the Mets could offer. Because objectively, I mean, the Brewers are an organization that is constantly cycling through young talent. And they're always looking for what the next move is to recoup some young talent with these guys that are getting older and more so on expiring contracts, leaving and heading out the door. That's Peralta, who is a rental. We all know that. And that's also Trevor McGill because, yeah, Trevor McGill is under contract through the 2027 season. But going back to the lockout, how much of a 2027 season are we really going to have? This is their chance to maximize their return for a guy like Trevor McGill. And the reason why they would want to do that, as good as Trevor McGill is, with his two-pitch mix, this guy throws gas, 100 miles per hour with his fastball and a knuckle curveball. That's fantastic. Is because they have another reliever who is just as electric in Abner Uribe, who posted a 1.67 ERA. I watched actually quite a bit of Brewers baseball. I was at a couple of games in Milwaukee watching Mets versus Brewers, and I was very impressed with Abner Uribe, who's basically going to be their closer if they do move Trevor McGill. He actually also had 7 saves on the season for the Brewers last season. So it's not a lock per se for the Brewers to let go of Trevor McGill, but he's already 32 years old. There's technically 2 years of control left with McGill, 2026 and 2027, but we don't know if we're getting a 2027 season at all, Rob. You know what I mean? And so that is maybe in the back of the Brewers' minds, and that's why they might want to go ahead and let go of a guy like McGill alongside Peralta to really get that maximum return back. And then in their lineup, they're a pesky bunch, dude. They are a pesky bunch. But what they lack really is power. I mean, they have some guys that can hit, 15 plus home runs. Yeah, sure, but they're really lacking true power and a balanced, powerful lineup. They are a team that gets on base at a very high clip. They have a lot of speed, maybe with the exception of a guy like William Contreras, who is one of their power guys. And they make pitchers work because they are a disciplined team. But they are probably looking for a guy that can put another guy that can put 15 to 20 home runs over the fence. And the Mets have that not only with the MLB ready talent, with some of these guys that, we don't know how much playing time they're going to get. We're talking about Mauricio, Vientos, and I don't think Beatty's going to be in this potential deal, but he also fits the mold because he just is coming off of an 18 home run season. But they also have a guy in Ryan Clifford that would make all the sense in the world, especially when you're taking a look at Christian Yelich and how old he is and how injured he is, and that corner outfield spot needing to be addressed from the Brewers' perspective. So I think these two organizations match up perfectly. And I can see this definitely happening. For Peralta, for sure, in that package. For Trevor McGill and Peralta, a little bit less likely, but I still think if the Mets offer the right amount with the plethora of talent that they have, that deal can get done. And then you're talking about a bullpen that has McGill, Williams as your setup guy, Brooks Raley, Luke Weaver, AJ Minter, whoever else, who even cares at that point, that is a solid top back end of the bullpen. And then also a rotation that you get a number one starter alongside Nolan McLean, which is what we have wanted for quite some time now. So, yeah, I think that these two organizations match up perfectly. And I think that the Brewers, although they're coming off of the best record in baseball and a very disappointing series to the would-be champion Dodgers, they still got a lot of work to do. And they are continuously evaluating this talent and cycling through it because they don't want to pay these guys. They're not going to give McGill a contract when he's up for one, and neither are they going to do so for Freddie Peralta. So, who will? The Mets. The Mets will probably start talking extension with Peralta right away. And that will be, a thing that happens. You can't, there's tampering if you do it beforehand. But I think that there have been some reports that Freddie Peralta's camp would be open, as we mentioned before when we talked about in the last hot stove, to an extension. That's something that the Mets and David Stearns, especially with the familiarity, can definitely pursue.
Yeah, and that's the idea, right? And that's why you've heard more of Peralta over Skubal because of the possibility of an extension. And yeah, I mean, we see the Brewers get exposed every playoffs because they don't have enough power. They get a ton of people on base, but they need 1, 2, 3, 4 hits just to get a couple of runs across the board. And they were very good at it during the season. But when you face top pitching in the playoffs day after day after day, it's very hard to get 5, 6 hits off a pitcher in one inning to score some runs. And the Brewers get exposed every offseason. And if they had 2 big power bats in that lineup with all the other guys getting on base, they would be a juggernaut. Make no mistake about it, but they get exposed every postseason. And again, we can explain. We're not a Brewers channel. We know why they don't have those big power bats, because power bats cost money, and they're not spending any money. So, yeah, the Mets line up well. We know it's Stearns and his connection with the Brewers. It makes a lot of sense. His connection with Peralta, getting him in here and extending him. It's one less thing to worry about next offseason or at the trade deadline, where you hope Nolan McLean takes that next step and Freddie Peralta is Freddie Peralta. And now you got a really good, really dominant 1-2. And then you can worry about your 3, 4, and 5. And with the Mets having so many different options to pitch, I guess we can talk about this considering we're talking about Peralta and the rotation. If it is Peralta being a New York Met and they trade for him, who's your 3, 4, 5? Like, is Manaea going to go into the bullpen? Is Clay Holmes, I believe, is going to be in this rotation. But again, you might have a difference of opinion about that. Where are all these guys going to go? Are you still going to trade a Cody Bellinger or a David Peterson? Because all these guys, you're not throwing anybody in the minor leagues at this point. So how many more guys can you put in the bullpen, considering the fact that probably 1 or 2 of these guys aren't going to be in the rotation starting the season? But how would you line up your rotation if Peralta does become a Met?
Well, he's 1. I mean, that's not a question. McLean is probably a 2. Depends on who the Mets give up in that trade. I mean, Brandon Sproat, I would imagine, goes in that deal. And you know what? I didn't even talk about it in my video earlier today, but I think that David Peterson could also go in that deal too if the Brewers push for a second starter who is also a rental. So that could also be a possibility. So I'll hold the door on that. Then I don't know, man. I mean, it depends on Jonah Tong and how confident they are in his abilities and whether he's going to be starting off in the major leagues. Because if Jonah Tong is not going to be ready to be a 3 in this rotation, you're probably talking about Sean Manaea and hoping that he bounces back and is a viable 3, or maybe even Clay Holmes. And that scares me. Like, that's why I've always thought that the Mets need 2 pitchers this offseason, because you need a mid-level starter and you need a top-end starter, because going into the season with Manaea or Clay Holmes as your 3 is absolutely absurd. Or maybe they would even make Cody Bellinger the 3. But then if you're talking about Cody Bellinger, are we going to a 6-man rotation or are we not going to a 6-man rotation? Can this guy last the whole season in the rotation or not? And so that's why I think we have both been in the camp of you need to let go of Cody Bellinger, not because we don't think he's going to bounce back. Well, maybe that's part of it. But also you have to just uproot the entire outlook of your rotation and add another guy into it to keep this guy every 6th day or on the every 6th day versus the every 5th day. So
Yeah.
I think it's going to be, if that were to be the case, it's Peralta, McLean. I'd probably give the nod to Sean Manaea. Clay Holmes would be your 4. And if Kodai Senga can finally commit to a 5-man rotation, that's probably your 5, with the anticipation of Jonah Tong starting off the season in the minor leagues before he's ready to come back up and make a real contribution. That rotation is better than what we had last year. Clearly, a fresh start, no injuries, but it could get better. Like, that's not like you get Peralta plus you sign a mid-level rotation arm that's reliable, a rubber arm. Then I'm like, I can work with that. But that still scares me, even if you have Peralta in the fold, rolling with the rest of those guys outside of McLean.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just a matter of like I said, even as Zach Gallen type, even though he wasn't good last year, he is a guy that throws a ton of innings. He's a perfect middle rotation type of guy at this point. I mean, he can potentially be an ace still, but he's probably, I think Zach Gallen's going to get a 1-year deal. That's one of the guys that they can actually try to get as well. But I wish Kodai Senga was off this team. I truly do. But if you notice, Stearns did not. Anytime he spoke this season about rotation or pitching, he has not talked about a 6-man rotation, and that's music to my ears. I thought it makes it a lot harder for other pitchers in this rotation to do something they're not used to doing. And Kodai Senga isn't part of this top pitching scenario for the Mets anymore. He should not be considered top rotation arm for the New York Mets. I know the last 2 seasons, the Mets seen Kodai Senga as that, and that's why they still went to that 6-man rotation and give him all these, basically, give him all this favoritism towards 6 days, give him extra days off and giving the rotation extra days off because of Kodai Senga. Now, if he can't pitch every 5th day, you know what? Throw his ass in the back of the bullpen and figure out how to use him, because he is hurting this team with a 6-man rotation. I've said that for a while. I don't think it helps other pitchers. Some pitchers don't like extra rest because they feel too strong. And for a guy in Kodai Senga who is often injured and inconsistent, you can't do a 6-man rotation because Kodai Senga needs it. You're hurting your other pitchers. I'm sick of Kodai Senga. I don't care. Throw him in a bullpen. Throw him somewhere. I don't care. If you got to make him a long man in the bullpen, even though I don't think he can do it, I don't think he can pitch every 5th day. And that's something that the Mets have to decide. That's why I rather trade him. But it's hard. It's obviously hard to trade him because Stearns is looking for, value in a Senga trade. But it's hard to get value back when the guy is often injured and inconsistent. He's got a great arm, but those 2 things are worrisome to other teams, and he's on the contract. It's hard to do. That's why, you made a great point about David Peterson potentially being in that Peralta trade, because that's a lot. It is a lot to give up, and people might not think of it that way. But if it's Sproat, Peterson, and I don't know, pick another prospect, it might be 3 guys. And for everybody who, killed me with the Duran trade, everybody thinks Peralta is going to be cheap because he's a rental. He's not going to be cheap, guys, and you're probably going to complain just as much of what we gave up for Peralta than what we might have to give up for another potential player as well, depending on what the Mets do. And look, I already said go get the best guy, do what you can, and I'm not going to make any bones about it when it comes to what the Mets have to give up anymore, because I'm sick and tired of all these prospects. We hear about them for years. The Mets trade for, trade and sign for multiple infielders when they have an abundance of younger prospects and guys who are already on the roster. And there's nowhere to play these guys. Everybody can't play shortstop. Everybody can't play second base, Chris. And, this is why we said when the Bo Bichette signing happened, even the people that was like, we can't trade these prospects, all of a sudden it's like, well, we got to make a trade here. We have too many guys. Because, again, are we really going to do this again of sitting Vientos, Mauricio, and Acuna all on the bench this year again? You can't do that. It doesn't work. That doesn't develop them at all. It doesn't make them better, and you lose value. And I don't think any of them can be bench players. Maybe Acuna with his speed, but his bat, if he can play every day, I think his bat can be okay. But you can't sit these guys on the bench, and you can't hoard these guys in the farm system. It just doesn't work. And as you said earlier in the show about Clifford and Jet Williams, Carson Benz passed them on the depth chart. You got to decide what you're going to do with these guys. Is Ryan Clifford going to be a future first baseman? All right, maybe you want to try to keep him. But you can't stop a trade that can help you right now, especially in the starting rotation, because you don't want to trade one of those guys. If you're going to be hesitant, like David Stearns has been over the last couple of years, you're going to have a hard time getting the guys you want. And again, guys, he still has not made a big trade with big prospects yet. Until he does that, wake me up when that happens. I'd be very, very excited when that happens because it kills two birds with one stone. It makes your team better. It lightens the load of your farm system. We have too many guys at one position. And David Stearns actually made a big trade. Wake me up when that happens because I'll be very excited that day.
I see people, talking about Peralta. There are concerns with Peralta being an ace, quote unquote. We understand that. Like, this guy is not Tariq Skubal. He's just not. How many true aces are going to be out there for the taking on this market, the way that it currently is shaping up? Not many. So if you really want the Mets to pass up an opportunity for Peralta and just wait and pray that the Tigers do end up trading Skubal, and you want to include a package for Skubal that has 5 top 10 prospects, because everybody loves to complain about trading prospects, but then when it comes down to do it, I don't get it. But it's a big chance to take on letting a situation in a scenario of Peralta that's there for the taking pass by, with the anticipation that you are putting all of your eggs in one basket towards Skubal this offseason, who, by the way, is not going to sign an extension because, well, I don't think he's going to sign an extension because he's the best pitcher in baseball. I mean, back-to-back Cy Youngs. It's a huge risk to take. So we can make excuses for a lot of these pitchers. Framber Valdez is probably not an ace and at this point of his career either. We can make that excuse too. So who do you want? You just want to run it back with the same rotation? That's not the right strategy whatsoever. And that's why I'm like, okay, I see Peralta's flaws, but that's still a guy that I want because he makes our rotation better. Regardless if you want to define him as an ace, he makes our rotation better than it was last season, point blank, period. And I don't want to take the chance of him going somewhere else and passing that opportunity by, and then also missing out on Tariq Skubal, who's going to be a 10 times harder to figure out that deal than a Peralta deal. So that's where I'm at with this. That's exactly where I'm at with this. And yes, I do see Griffin Canning. There was a report that the Mets are interested in Griffin Canning and bringing him back. I don't hate it, but I don't love it because he's coming off of an Achilles. That's a big risk. I mean, that's a big injury for a pitcher, especially. I'm not sure if it was it had to be his plant foot, right? Or no, maybe it wasn't. I don't know which leg it was. Doesn't really matter. Pitchers drive with both of their legs. One's the drive foot, one's the plant foot. That's a lot of stress and toll on an Achilles that is healed, I guess, in year one. He did really well, actually. And I actually have a lot of respect for Griffin Canning because he outperformed expectations before he went down with injury. But I just don't think that is a rotation changer with what we have in this rotation right now. So I'm good on Griffin Canning. I know that he's going to have a lot of interest. The Mets are reportedly one of the teams that want to bring him back, but I don't want to see him back. I don't think that's the best move for the Mets right now.
Yeah, and somebody also brought up Christian Scott coming back with Tommy John.
He's bullpen guy.
Yeah, me too. But again, we have to see if he can, again, he's going to have major innings limits. You can't put this guy in the middle of this rotation. And, guys in the middle of the rotation are guys that are got to be the innings eaters in this team along with your ace. He's not going to be that. And depending on what the Mets do with some of their pitchers, I can't trust him at this moment when we're going to need him to throw multiple, a decent amount of innings. Can't trust that right now. Let him ease into it. Give him some minor league starts. See how he does. If he's blowing it up and dominating in the minors and he looks healthy, maybe we could talk about it when the season starts and during the season. But he can be a mid-season addition by bringing him up mid-season if that's the case as well. And BBA brought this up. So why give up young pitching for a mid pitcher who can't pitch past 5 innings? Peralta, I'm assuming you're talking about, is not a mid pitcher. He had a 2.7 ERA last year. That is not a mid pitcher. That's one of the best pitchers in baseball. And you're saying he's a 5-inning pitcher, but what did we not have last year? We had one pitcher who averaged 5 innings a game, and that was Clay Holmes. And that was barely. I just did the math. Last year, Peralta did 5 and 3/3 innings is what he averaged, which is around almost 6 innings. More than enough. Again, the way it works nowadays, because they take these guys out early in the first couple of months of the season, they usually average that because a lot of these teams don't even let their aces go in April and May past the 5th inning and probably past 90-something pitches for a while. So that's why they average it out 5 and 2/3 innings. But if you look at Peralta at the end of the season, especially in July and August, he was averaging 6 innings, 6.5 innings per game. That's what he was doing. And, when the Brewers needed to get some wins here, and obviously they slowed them down in September when they basically had the playoffs, in sight, when they didn't have to worry about the playoffs. So, and to go back to your question, why give up young pitching? Because what is young pitching, right? We always talk about you got to give to get, right? The Mets can't rely on Brandon Sproat because you're not going to get a starting pitcher in a trade without giving up young pitching. If you don't want to do that, then sign Valdez. But the Mets don't seem to be willing to do that. So you can't have one or the other. This is why when people talk about they want to get better, but when you entice them with a package and it involves prospects they like, all of a sudden they don't want to do it. But they don't like Framber Valdez enough. So that means you're not going to get a top starter then.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
That's the point that is frustrating and always concerning when some Met fans talk about, well, why give up young pitching? Because young pitching is not proven. All right. I'm not saying Brandon Sproat can't be a top starter. I'm not even saying Jonathan Tom can't be a top pitcher, but they're not right now. And if you just signed Bo Bichette, you're in on Bellinger. If you're going to get proven talent in here, you can't half-ass a rotation like they did last year, because we're going to have a similar season like last year. Because if the rotation is not good enough and they're just as bad or close to bad as last year, you're going to destroy your bullpen. And we're back to square one, exactly what we were talking about last year. You got to improve the starting rotation. And giving up young pitching, and Peralta makes the most sense because Chris brought up a great point. He's willing to sign an extension, which is more, I guess you can understand giving up young pitching because you can sign him long term. That is the idea. And I understand people get upset about the farm system and trading guys, but teams that actually win don't have that conversation. When you're trying to win, your farm system is more of an asset rhythm to get to what you need, where you need to get to, and make the big trades. That's where the Mets need to get to. Unfortunately for the Mets, they've had weird seasons where they should be trading some prospects to get better during the season, but they don't. You see the teams that win World Series, they make big trades in the offseason, trading prospects, and at the deadline. The Mets seem to be immune to that and like allergic to it. It just doesn't make sense for us. So overall, the fact of the matter is, if you're trying to get better, and the Bo Bichette signing means the Mets are trying to get better and be a contender now instead of a rebuild, which we were talking about 2 weeks ago, Chris, make it happen. And me and you agree that go get Freddie Peralta. It's going to cost you, but if anybody's going to complain about it, then you really got to question yourself in the mirror, Mets fans. Do you really want to win? Say that in the mirror to yourself and think, if that's what you want, if you want to win, you got to be willing to get proven talent in here. Just ask yourself that question, and that's just how it goes, Chris.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans want to get and not give. Don't we all? David Stearns wants to do that as well.
Why don't we dump Vientos? That's what they said. Dump them where? Where are we dumping?
Yeah.
Somebody needs to want them. as well. So,
Right.
any final thoughts, Chris, before we call it a night before the national
Well,
championship game?
Well, you know what? I mean, I see a lot of other names that are going to be up for discussion in a lot of future streams and videos that we have. The Mets are reportedly eyeing a reunion with Harrison Bader. So that's a contingency plan
Sure.
after Bellinger. What Will Salmon said is the potential contingency plans if the Mets don't land Bellinger for another outfielder is Robert Jr., Harrison Bader, and Bader. I'm like, how much stock are we putting into the year that he just had in the Twins and Phillies uniform?
I'm not. I'm
I
not.
don't know if I buy it. I mean, if he's taking a 1-year deal, sure, but that season that he had, he's going to be wanting a multi-year deal. And I just don't see it happening with the Mets.
Yeah, I agree.
But nonetheless, that's another guy that Will Salmon stated they could pivot to. Lars Nootbaar, right? And then what's the last one? Jake Myers, who I made a video about way back when, who's coming off of a decent offensive year, which is unlike him, but provides great good offensive year, provides great defense. I still don't want that guy. Like, that's not a needle mover. I would be willing to take the chance on Robert Jr. Like, I get it. He sucked for the past 2 years. He showed a glimmer of hope in the second half last season. He has more upside than the other 3 names put together, I think. So I take the chance there, especially because he is also another DH type bat that you can put into your lineup if you really need to. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. The other name that we didn't talk about so much on this stream is Jarren Duran. And, the fit with the New York Mets. I think there's a very big fit with the New York Mets if they decide to take that route. It would undoubtedly take a worthwhile infielder as they search for some sort of answer at second base and third base, now losing out on Alex Bregman. Well, Brett Beatty is going to be playing out of position, so that's like the first name that comes to mind. I did a video about that, and so did you on both of our channels, talking about some trade packages there. And then I wanted to talk about this real quick before we head out of here. I don't know if the Mets care about this, and Will Salmon mentioned something about this scenario between the Mets and Framber Valdez and the second qualifying offer free agent player that they could sign. Bichette is the first one, Framber Valdez, or a lot of people are talking about Zach Gallen. Zach Gallen also has the QO attached to him. Like, is David Stearns, knowing the type of executive that he is and how much he values the farm system, do we think he's forfeiting more draft picks to get another qualifying offer free agent in the doors? Because I did a video about this yesterday too. I dropped 2 videos on my channel. The first one was talking about this very topic. With signing Bo Bichette, the Mets lose out on their 2nd round pick and their 5th round pick. It's technically 2nd highest and 5th highest, but they don't have a compensatory pick before that, right? They don't have a compensation pick before that. So it's your 2nd round pick and your 5th round pick. Right now, they also got docked 10 spots down. The lotto gave them 17, but because of the CBT tax that they're picking at 27. So right now, after Bo Bichette, they're picking 1, 3, 4, and 6 and beyond, because the MLB draft is crazy and goes a bunch of rounds. But if they sign Framber, they're losing out on an additional, I think, what was it? I think they lose out on the 3rd round pick and the 6th round pick. So they would be left with pick 1 in the 1st round, number 27. They'd be left with the 4th round pick. I think it's like 123. And then the compensation pick that they got for Edwin Diaz, which is 137. Now, I don't care about these draft picks personally. That's my take. I don't give a shit about the draft picks. I don't. Go sign Framber if you have the opportunity to do so that way people won't complain about needing to trade prospects for a pitcher, because apparently Freddie Peralta is not worth it. I think he is. Clearly, people in the chat don't think he's worth it. But I just don't think David Stearns in this front office are thinking like the Dodgers. The Dodgers did it. They don't care. The Dodgers just signed Tucker and Diaz, and they are like, we don't need those picks. They don't need those picks, right? So I'm curious if the Mets do that. What do you think? I just wanted to bring that up before we end this stream. A lot of people are going to say, a lot of Mets fans are going to say, We just signed almost the entire class of international, free agents, of IFA guys, especially a Segan. And this team, if you're really wanting to go for it in 2026, that's the sacrifice you're going to have to make. Who cares about the draft picks that you're not going to even see for 4 years down the road, maybe even 5? I think you're in that boat as well. I also agree with that too. I could care less about the draft picks at this point. I just don't think that David Stearns is thinking that way, unfortunately.
um, I honestly don't know what David Stern is thinking. Like I said, the plan is all over the place, in my opinion, with him. He's obsessed with the prospects. He talks about how important draft picks are, and then he signs Bo Bichette. I don't know. Me, I don't care about the draft picks. You already got one of the top farm systems in baseball. You already signed back-to-back years top international free agents, which is another way to improve your farm system. So maybe getting Asigan and getting the 2 top international free agents back-to-back years means that he's willing to give up a couple of more draft picks this season. I mean, they're in on Bellinger. They're in on Valdez, at least the last time we heard. So maybe they don't care about that. Maybe as long as they got that first-round pick and they can make that 27 pick in the draft, maybe they're okay with it. Maybe they are. That's the only thing I can think of because again, we would do it. We don't care. We don't care about the draft pick, especially when you already got a farm system in what a lot of people are saying is like top 5, top 6 in baseball. You're fine, especially with the international signings. You're going to be fine. Even if you give out prospects and you lose multiple draft picks, your farm system is still going to be very damn good. And again, with the guys you bring in, the young kids that you hope establish themselves that are still here, that is less guys that are in your farm system that are important to possibly help your team and also could be assets. But yeah, I think the draft picks probably are a concern of David Stearns, but you can't miss out on getting better because of draft picks, guys that might not be ready until 2030. You can't concern yourself about 2030 because David Stearns, you might not have a job if this team don't win. All right? You might be elsewhere. Let's be honest about that, guys. He signed Bo Bichette. He still has a lot of work to do. If you think that if he has to worry about draft picks that are going to turn out in 2030, and if they actually turn out, then you got to get your goddamn head examined. I'm not saying don't care about the future, but in baseball, as a GM, there is no future. You could be gone in 3 years. So nobody's going to care about 2030 when you're out the door and another GM doesn't like your plays is going to change everything that you put together. So David Stearns, honestly, I think David Stearns, I think the Steve Cohen thing with Tucker really kind of moved David Stearns in a different direction, in my opinion, Chris. I know that might be outside the box thinking, but I don't think David Stearns is feeling as comfortable as he was last year. I think Steve Cohen being very much aggressive in that Kyle Tucker negotiations, I think kind of made David Stearns a little bit uncomfortable. And I don't think Steve Cohen is as happy as everybody thinks he is and letting Steve Cohen does what he wants. I don't think Steve Cohen is very happy at the moment. And I think David Stearns understands that. And I think that's why they pivoted very quickly to Bo Bichette. And if that Bo Bichette signing means anything, I think Stearns is going to worry about getting into proven talent and not just the draft picks.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think going back to that conversation, Framber, if that's who they decide to go after, I mean, the Dodgers just did it. The Mets can do it too. I mean, this farm system is fine enough, man. But we'll see what happens. I just wanted to bring that up because, and I saw the comment here or the question from Brad. I just mentioned the Mets for Edwin Diaz. Their compensation pick is after the 4th round. So the Mets are picking in the 4th round at 123, and then the Edwin Diaz compensation pick that they get is pick 137. So
okay,
14 picks later. So not that it I mean, it does matter, but not that it matters to us because we don't really care about that, and the draft's not until months away. So it is what it is. I mean, you get Framber on a 3-year deal. I'll lose the 2 picks. Like I would lose the 2 picks right away, but I just don't know what's going on in the mind of David Stearns if he wants to do that, or if he's really committed to making a trade happen, let's say for a guy like Peralta, or maybe even another pitcher that we're not talking about right now. But other than that, I think the only other thing that we should be talking about, maybe even next stream, is the Jarren Duran situation and the outfield outside of Cody Bellinger. Because we know Cody Bellinger's plan A, right, moving forward. What is going to be plan B and C? And I think that with what the Red Sox have cooking up and how their roster looks, Jarren Duran might be on his way out. Although we did say that before. But another team that I think is going to be in for an outfielder, unfortunately, especially if they move off of one of their veterans right now that they've been trying to do for this entire offseason, you probably guessed it, it's none other than the Dodgers. They are looking to offload Teoscar Hernandez. And could they make a run for Cody? Could they give up the prospects for Jarren? Probably. I wouldn't put it past them at this point.
Well, yeah, and to make everything clear, when you talk about Duran, the reason why I made that video, and people probably didn't understand that I was talking about Duran just only, it was the whole point of, if they don't land Cody Bellinger, Duran is going to be a target for or at least a potential target for the New York Mets. I think a lot of people in the comments were like, what the hell are you doing? Just sign Cody Bellinger. I know that. Like, I didn't think I had to make it obvious in the video to understand that Cody Bellinger is obviously plan A. I'm not making a deal while Cody Bellinger is still on the table. That doesn't make any sense to get Duran at that point until you lose out on Cody Bellinger, because you're talking about lesser players like Hayes, like a Bader, maybe even Luis Robert Jr. Like, it's lesser players. A lot of people in the comments didn't like Jarren Duran either. I don't know why people don't like Jarren Duran. He's a solid ball player. He's not a bad player. Again, a 20 home run guy, where the Mets hardly had that in center field for a while. He is a really good defender. He's a 260 hitter. And he's a fine ball player. And if you haven't noticed what David Stearns is trying to do, he's trying to get grinders. He's trying to get badass professional ball players. Not a lot of big home run guys, but you got Lindor and Soto for that. You got a bunch of guys. If you sign either Cody Bellinger or Duran, a lot of this lineup has 20 to 25 home run potential. And you have 30 plus home runs with Lindor and Soto. That is a lot of home runs spread out through your lineup and not just stuck at your top four. If you notice what David Stern is trying to do this year, he's trying to expand that lineup with guys that are not big power guys, but are guys that can hit 18 to 20 home runs throughout the lineup. And if you realize what he's trying to do here, he's bringing in a lot of guys that are very clutch, guys that don't hit a lot of home runs, but have around 80 to 90, 75 to 90 RBIs. That means they put the bat on the ball more. He brought in a lot of guys that don't strike out a lot, something that the Mets had huge problems with over the last couple of seasons, specifically with the former core of this team, Chris. So any final thoughts before we go, and we'll catch everybody next time.
Yeah, no, I think this is a good, quick little stream that we did. A lot of topics covered. I think that Mets fans are all eyes on Cody Bellinger now. I think that we are getting excited. The Bo Bichette move, gave us a glimmer of hope of going out there and being aggressive even still for the rest of the offseason. Would love for it to be Bellinger and Peralta in the next coming weeks. That is like plan A, but we'll see what David Stearns and how aggressive he's going to be moving forward. There's even with Bo Bichette, I mean, the holes on this roster are plentiful. And I think what got us so excited is that, they were really quick to pivot, and they understood that they could not just sit around and watch another top bat go off the market to a division rival. And that's what made me respect that move immensely from David Stearns, who was always laying the groundwork of that deal, according to the reporters and Will Salmon, even since the GM meetings back in November. So it's not like they didn't have Bichette on their radar. They always did. They just wanted Tucker first, and then they were going to pivot to Bichette after. But a signal, hopefully, of more moves to come, and hopefully soon for us to have more content to talk about. But there's a lot of different avenues with all the videos that we've been releasing and these topics and streams that we're doing, a lot of different avenues even still. But what's going to have to happen is you're going to have to make a sacrifice. You're going to have to sacrifice the draft picks, like we just mentioned, for a guy like Framber Valdez, or you're going to have to sacrifice the prospects that are in your farm system or MLB talent to get a guy like Freddie Peralta. You have to sacrifice something. You can't get these players for free. So that's what we're faced with here. And we need somebody. We cannot go back to 2026 with the same damn rotation.
Yes,
Get some fresh faces in here and revamp this rotation, man. I don't care if they're rentals at this point.
Exactly. I mean, I'm already negative. I don't want to be more negative to start the season like I was last year with the rotation. But maybe soon, guys, we'll do a couple of days from now, or even very soon, if there's more reports coming out about Cody Bellinger, possibly signing soon, do a Cody Bellinger watch party. Why not? As we did the Kyle Tucker watch party. That was kind of fun as well, even though ultimately we lost out on him. But we got a consolation prize in Bo Bichette. So with that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to Mets Hot Stove right here on the channels and on X. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channels, guys. So much more offseason to go, so many more players to talk about. Hit that like button, hit that notification button, guys, for all our live streams and our videos. Thank you guys for watching. As always, Met fans, let's go Mets, and we'll see you next time, guys. Have a good night.
Let's go Mets.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really sucking the ball.